Track sounds.
All right, welcome back to Never Less Than Ill podcast. I'm your host, Justin Ivy, and I'm with my man, the mastermind behind Bros Who Think, Mr. Lynden Burton. Lynn, how's it going these days?
Doing well, man. Can't complain, living life, loving it. And I'm into the Pellies right now, NBA free agency, so I can't be too upset right now.
Yeah, it's been fun seeing the moves going down. I've also, on the basketball front, I'm also big into the the Olympic Games and watching the
True.
Keeping up with Team USA. It's been
we finally started to win.
Yeah, so maybe getting it together so that hopefully they'll have a nice little run. So, but yeah, it's been fun watching some sports I wouldn't normally be paying any attention to too.
Which ones have you been watching? Because like me, mainly it's just been like swimming, watching Katie Ledecky do her thing.
Mhm.
I watched some gymnastics here and there. I watched the one where Sunny Lee won. Great match. And then I watched the pole vaulting thing for Mondo Duplantis, the guy from Lafayette.
Mondo.
Yeah, so
LSU legend.
I think he plays either tonight or tomorrow night.
I saw, I always try to like keep an eye on the LSU guys and girl, whatever sport they're in. So it's like, Juwan Harrison, I was rooting for him hard, but he kind of struggled a little bit. I was hoping he would have done a little better, but always the consistent one the last few Olympics has been always going to get Sylvia Fowles, because in the women's basketball, they're always going to win.
Butt.
So
that's a fact.
So I always like seeing her play, getting minutes but yeah, I've been watching like judo and boxing and what's like the handball, like
it's like people talk about handball
version of soccer. It's weird, but yeah, the one I was really into was the 3-on-3 basketball.
That's been fun. It's because it hasn't been like real WNBA people or NBA people, so it's like it's been interesting to watch the Americans compete in that.
I really like that one. Like, to me, that was the one I was like, okay, they need to make a pro league out of this. Like, this is fun. Just the 10 minutes of straight defense. I love that stuff. But so the Olympics are fine, but hey, Olympics are fitting, I guess we should say, because we went a somewhat international today, as we're covering the legendary Slick Rick, Britain's own Slick Rick.
Facts.
And we're going into a deep dive into the legendary career of MC Ricky D, and to help us do that, we got the legendary Skyy Hook. She's a veteran hip hop journalist, and man, her resume is too long to list. But man, you might know her from the Wake Up Show with Sway and King Tech on Shade 45, or you might even, if you're a student out in Cal, you might have caught her teaching these days, as she's been teaching classes and having some epic interviews with some hip hop luminaries for some students down there at Cal, and benefiting from that Zoom life. So Skyy is one of the best sources out there in terms of hip hop history, and I'm excited to have her for this. So let's get right into this conversation about Slick Rick. Skyy Hook, talking about Slick Rick today. Skyy, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Absolutely. It's so good to have you. So to start off, I always like to ask, what was the first time you remember hearing Slick Rick?
Oh gosh. I have older cousins. So I was in elementary school, and it was I think I heard Lottie Dottie in the show at the same time, like in the same stretch at one of my older cousins' house, Jeremy. So that's when I first remember hearing Slick Rick. And I thought his accent was dope. That was my first, one of these kids is doing his own thing type, noticing like, interesting. So yeah. It's the accent, me.
It's funny. That was, I had kind of the similar reaction. I didn't hear him that early. I was too young, but I I heard him the first time was on Outkast's Art of Storytelling, was actually my introduction. And I just remember like, yeah,
Wow.
the accent being what stood out so much. I was like, oh, this guy, whoa, this is interesting. This is cool. And then it's like, then you start doing your research, you go down children's story and everything. And it was so fun to kind of, I always loved going down those, rabbit holes of discovering people. And, but yeah, that was like me as a little kid discovering Slick Rick was around Art of Storytelling right there. So, Slick's story is so interesting because obviously he was born in London and immigrated over here. What do you think is kind of the most fascinating part of Slick's early origin? What stood out to you, like as you've kind of researched him and studied him over the years?
Wow. I forgot I'm dealing with somebody on my level with this. Okay. You stumped me. Congratulations. Everybody's gonna be on me for that. Like, you didn't have an answer. That's so good, Justin. Gosh, I think one of the things about his origin story as far as hip hop is concerned, with Get Fresh and everything, was just how he was able to stick out while still being a part of, if that makes any sense at all. You know what I mean? He was such a part of Get Fresh, but at the same time, he's undeniably, like, there was no way not to notice Ricky. So yeah, I guess that would be what I would say. One of the things that fascinated me the most, because, a lot of groups have come and gone, and there were people who were great as far as their dynamic within their group, but, we don't always still get to hear from them. So I think if you say Slick Rick, everybody knows who that is.
Absolutely. So yeah, kind of reflecting on his early days, he gets started with the Kangol crew, him and Dana Dane, and they go from there. Then he finally links up with Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew, and that's where things really take off for him. And we get these two classic singles that you mentioned, the A side and the B side. What do you think it was about the show and Lottie Duddy that stood out so much at that time, and the way they have just lasted for all these years and still being interpolated and sampled and referenced all these years later?
I think they were some of the first to really kind of step outside the, nah, 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 nah. You know what I mean? Like, there was accent, I don't mean the British thing. I mean, there was accent. They accentuated words differently. And it made, when we rock up on the right mic, we rock the mic right. You know what I mean? Like little things that made you excited to say it. And mind you, a lot of us were little, when we were first exposed to these songs. So I get goosebumps even thinking about that. Just, you had your favorite little parts, and they're still beloved. I think for that, the nostalgia of them today is they're still beloved because of that. There was something different in the way they delivered it. And now this is where people are starting to experiment with stepping away from being just that dude at the party, right? Because at this point, the DJ is still the one who we're paying attention to. Your job as the MC is to corral the people to pay attention to the DJ still, right? Well, now they're starting to say these things like, what did he say? And they're saying it in such a way that you want more. You just want more and more and more. When I hear 6 minutes to this second, if somebody says, oh yeah, we're doing this in 6 minutes, I'm that jerk. I'm still that person that has to go 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh. Shut up, Skyy. So, I think that has a lot to do with it. It was just the way they were doing it, which was completely their own and very different. And I would be remiss, you mentioned Dana Dane, and I've said this to Dana Dane, so I'm not telling tales outside of school. I would be remiss to say that I as a little kid, didn't understand that Dana's accent was not real. When I heard him, I was covering a show. I think we're at Foxwoods or someplace. And I'm backstage and I'm writing. I was at All Hip Hop at the time, and I'm writing this piece and what's going on back here. And Dana Dane walked out. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" They're like, "What's up, Dana?" And he's just talking regular. And I was like, you know, I've been confused before. Idris, a couple other people got by me. I thought they were American. They weren't. So I was like, is he just not using the, is he just not doing that anymore? And they're like, what are you talking about, Scott? You didn't think that was like real, did you? What? No. No, not at all. So, I mean, even then, that's how cool Slick Rick was. That this dude is from Fort Greene for real and ain't never spent a minute in London, and here we are. So, you know, I think the way he the way he went about everything was just so fly. You just wanted to be like that, right?
And I think, you know, as Slick's kind of solo career, you know, as he transforms from MC Ricky D to Slick Rick, you know, I think it's, you know, it seems kind of obvious now, but it's one of the kind of things that just stands out about him is just the eye patch. You know, he's got this, it just stands out as, okay, look, this guy's different. There's something, you know, this is a whole different look. You know, we're kind of getting more into the, you know, the rappers are getting into, you know, the presentation of themselves as you know, more of an entity, like you said, moving away from the DJ, and they're becoming their own thing. And Slick's got this one, you know, characteristic of his look that's just, you know, part of his life, you know, having an eye injury, and he makes it his own.
Oh,
Look, yeah.
He made you want to have doggone eye patch. Like, who says that? I know what'll be the accessory. Grab an eye patch. But I wanted one. I did. His raw blinged out and dope. Like, you weren't getting that, but you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always think of like Slick Rick as one of the first guys to like just kind of make that the whole gold chain, the whole coat, the look, you know, because like LL, you know, had the, you know, the Kangol style and you know, the sweatpants, but it's like Slick Rick was like, you know, to me, like Ghostface got his style from Slick Rick and you know, Jay, like all these guys, like you could point to Slick as the guy they were modeling after.
Sure. I think he and probably Rakim and Daddy Kane and a couple others, they were all kind of doing that around the same time. But I always wondered as a little kid, how much did it weigh? If you jump up and down, will it hurt you here? You know, I had questions.
So 1998, we get his first full-length album. He's one of the, you know, first 3 artists that ends up on Def Jam. And, you know, this is obviously, you know, one of the most influential labels of all time. But 98, we get his first full-length album. It's The Great Adventures of Slick Rick.
You mean 88?
88, excuse me.
I don't want him to get you in the comments, my brother. I got you back.
Absolutely. 88.
Like 98.
Yeah. But so 88, we get the Great Adventures. What were do you remember the first time you heard that? What stood out about it? What was, you know, what that album meant to you at the time?
Yeah. Dave the Dope Fiend shooting dope. You don't know the meaning of water or soap. Yeah, that stood out. And A Teenage Love stood out. A Teenage Love, if you're a teenager listening to that song, or almost a teenager listening to that song, you know, you should make your daughters listen to that song. It's warning, it's fair warning that all young girls should hear, you know, or whatever boys maybe do, because it's legit. And, you know, you've been going with your steady boyfriend for, you know, 3 weeks in 7th grade, and, you know, you think you're gonna last forever and you're gonna marry him. Then you hear the Slick Rick song, you find out that's probably not gonna happen. And don't go buy him stuff if he stops talking to you, because he's just gonna, you know, take it and be a jerk. Yeah. I thought that was a good page for the handbook of how to be a teenage girl. And Hey Young World, like, come on, really?
Mm.
I don't even like bringing this up, but it happened. When I was at All Hip Hop, the Barclays was a new thing, and Ricky was performing at the Barclays. And apparently a lot of people were having a problem with the monitors feeding back in their ears, right? And Rick is a professional, consummate professional. So he was having those problems. He couldn't hear where the music was, but he just kept going. And they started to boo Hey Young World.
Mm.
Like, what? What? Of all songs, like Hey Young World. So we have a staff meeting at All Hip Hop the next day. And some of our colleagues, who I will not call out in this podcast, you know who you are. You know you're wrong. Was he drunk? Was he high? I heard that and I was like, I got it. Editorial is mine. And I wrote this piece, like, I think I said something like, I don't care if he got up on the stage and smoked crack in front of you. You do not boo Hey Young World. What is wrong with you people? And all of you other journalists who know there's probably a problem, shame on you. You've never heard of Slick Rick being sloppy. Not ever. Not ever. And I think to this day, I might have been the only person who wrote something in defense of him. And then come to find out, it's like, maybe he's got the flu, maybe he had bad fish. I don't know. And I don't even care. And then we found out about, the monitors or whatever. He went on record as saying it was like the worst day of his professional career.
Wow.
So all you people who wrote them hit pieces, I wouldn't talk to you. Just saying. If he wants to say something that's a big deal, I wouldn't go talk to them people.
Well, I think one of the cool things about Great Adventures is, you think about at the time, his contemporaries at Def Jam, people like, Run DMC and Public Enemy, and they're involved in a way, the Bomb Squad's producing on there, Jam Master Jay's producing on there, Slick's producing himself. What about the sound? I think we focus so much with Slick on, the storytelling and his rhyme structure. What about the sound of that album, sonically stood out to you?
The sound of it, it was like, a lot of people throw around the word classic, and I never do. I think, my reputation is I hate everything anyway. So I definitely don't give out that classic label, but it was a classic album for me. Everything melded. And because he's such a storyteller, each song had its own little space and time, if that makes any sense. Do you know what I mean? Each song is its own little, it's like a little storybook, like an audio book just for you. And everybody took something different from each song. Now, I don't know about Treat Her Like a Prostitute, I don't know about that. Mr. Slick. But not everybody can tell a story, Justin. Not everybody who tries to tell a story in rhyme does it successfully. These are even the talented ones who can actually rhyme, let alone the people who are just phoning it in. So for him to successfully tell a story on just about every track on there, and from start to finish, you got something like you weren't looking for anything more by the time he was done, it's unheard of. And not many have been able to replicate that since.
Yeah, I think Slick still stands today as the best storyteller. It's just this album alone is an accomplishment in that. And I think what was always impressed me about Slick is just the way he would inject humor into his stories. And it's like, who could make, like, if you actually just look at what he's saying in Children's Story, for example, it's like, this is a heartbreaking tale. It's like, this is not something that should be amusing, and he turns it into this like kitty rhyme story, that this little tale. It's like, and you're like, if you're not paying attention to what he's saying, you're just like, you would think this is just this little happy-go-lucky track that you would like. It's like, wait a minute, this is dark. You know?
Right? And it starts off, Uncle Ricky, can you read us a bedtime story, please, huh? Please, you know, like, oh, okay. where are we going here? Wait, what? And the kid dies. It looks like, you know, just wow, the kid dies. Okay. It's very dark, but light and airy in parts, and only Ricky could do that. You know, I often wonder, and I've interviewed a couple people, and I meant to ask and don't remember if I did or not. Bad on me. But like Mr. Cheeks and a couple other people who I think are really good storytellers, I wonder, was that not somebody that they looked up to as well? I would assume yes.
So, you know, The Great Adventures, obviously this is one of the biggest, most important albums in hip hop of the 80s. But then as we go into the 90s, this is where Slick's life just kind of becomes a mess, because, you know, he gets the cousin, the bodyguard, gets involved in his life, and the shooting happens, the attempted murder charge, all this is going down. Do you remember just kind of what, any kind of the chaos at that time? Like, do you recall like being like thrown off by like Slick's life at that time as a fan?
Yeah, I think that obviously hip hop journalism then wasn't what it is now. There was no socials, there was nothing other than you're gonna get that off like what, Yo MTV Raps, and maybe at the top of the, you know, it's not something that would necessarily make national news. Were they even, you know, respecting hip hop at that point? But it was definitely on MTV, top of the hour. And I think it was a lot for people to digest, because this is the author, like we just said, of Hey Young World. So you did children's story and all that, and now you're on jail and you get deported and all these things are happening, and now it's a crime story that we're getting from him. And he copped to it though. And one of the illest things, the most un-hip hop things ever, he copped to it and was like, don't do what I did. Oh, well, I never. You know, where do they do that at? You know, he was legit. And I think that, you know, that could have happened to him the way it could happen to anybody. It was just one of those things that sometimes you get caught up with people and you think people have your best interest at heart and they don't. And you just happen to be more notable than others who get caught up the same way. You know, all of our moms have at least one time in our lives told us they didn't like our little friend. I don't like your little friend, you know, your little fast friend, or whatever they say, that person you bring in the house who they just can see where it could go wrong. He's human, right? And I think that all of that really humanized Rick, for an audience who immortalized him, who put him up so far on these pedestals. You found out he's just a guy, you know, he's a human being and makes mistakes just like anybody else. But the beauty of it was he realized who was looking at him and he turned around and did the right thing. And I just don't think people today would do that. I really don't. They barely did it then. So yeah, I think that was a hell of an example. You know, way to get back up on that perch, Ricky D. Way to get back up on that pedestal, guy.
That's a great point. And I think it's kind of fascinating, you know, how when that happened. And so as it happens, you know, his immigration status becomes a whole thing. And we kind of see it happen again all these years later when 21 Savage it was like, oh, this is a repeating of history moment. And it's just kind of fascinating. I think, you know, they always talk about like, you know, things come in cycles, and it's like we see in that in hip hop. It's like those stories, it's Slick, you know, Slick, it's happening to somebody else too.
Yeah. I think one of the things we benefited from was the fact that, you know, he could make music from wherever. So it didn't necessarily stop him, but I think that trajectory would have been a lot higher, you know, for that era. But regardless, you can't take his legendary status from him. He'll always be an icon. He'll always be that guy. He'll always be that set of talent to shoot for people who actually can rhyme, for people who actually are entertaining, for people who actually care, you know, whether it be culture or otherwise, you know what I mean? He'll always have a point of view that will last, and that's timeless. Right from wrong will never go away. There'll be a lot more people, obviously, like now, who don't care about right from wrong, maybe, but for those who do, for those who still want to teach their children the things, the way they should go, morality of any kind, he's still a go-to guy, you know, and he'll always be on every GOAT list. You can't take him off. Who's gonna check him, boo? Who's gonna take him off the GOAT list? I'd love to see who. It's not happening. You have to be better than him to take him off, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so who takes him off?
Nobody. So at that time too, you know, kind of a like fascinating little, you know, point of history is that, you know, he gets bailed out at the time to record his second album, and The Ruler's Back. I think that album is something that's kind of suffered from just the weight of his debut, and just like you said, it's a classic. And how do you follow that up? Do you remember, you know, did you feel disappointed when you heard that album? Did it live up to, you know, what you were expecting, or was it kind of completely something you weren't, you know, expecting from him?
I don't think I was disappointed. I don't think I would use the word disappointed. I think it didn't feel maybe as cohesive. Didn't feel as well thought out. And maybe it was or wasn't, I don't really know. It didn't, like, you know, wow, no, I don't mess with him anyway. It didn't do anything like that, you know. It just, it wasn't the Ricky of old, but nothing could be, right? You have to be allowed to go in different directions and try different things. And so I don't think I was angry about it. I don't know as many songs by heart off of it. Like, you know, Great Adventures I could do in my sleep. But I also don't think that's really fair, you know, because the talent was on everybody else's everything before he got the chance to even do his own to begin with. So, and then, like you said, you know, there were a lot of trials and tribulations between the two. So maybe the stuff that you wrote under duress or in frustration, you know, if you had the chance to take it back, maybe that wouldn't have been the way you moved. I don't know. I think we have to forgive people for their humanness with certain things. And if that was the art that he wanted to make, you know, okay. He's good. So I can forgive it, all right? So don't come back at me, you know, people trying to give me music that I'm gonna hate and like, what's the art that I want to make? That ain't the art that I want to buy, you know what I'm saying? Ricky's art is art that I wanted to buy. And I promise you, his 5% of trying is everybody else right about now is 100%. So
it is kind of interesting, like, you know, when you look back at it, like with that perspective of just everything he was going through. And it, you know, I don't, like you said, we don't really know, but it does almost, like, listening to the album, it does feel like it's rushed, like it's somebody just trying to get this music out there because they know they're going to be going in a
contract.
Yeah, exactly. And but I think it's like we still, you know, he's kind of doing like a faster flow on it, and that's you know, what always stood out to me on that album. But it's like, I think you get kind of flashes of kind of classics Rick, like the Moses joint, like where he's just going a straight biblical tale. Like that's like something you would have thought, okay, this is slick Rick. Like this is what he would have done if he had time.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was trying not to use the word rushed, but since you did, yeah, I definitely felt hurried. like, come on, we gotta, they're gonna forget you. Like, oh my God, we'd never forget you. So, you know, if he put out a record right now, Justin, I'd be open. I'd be one of the first people at the listening party eating my little hors d'oeuvres, you know, like you don't say. Just because I think that even though that project wasn't necessarily my favorite, it was still clever. He was still clever throughout. The man knows his way around a simile and a metaphor. So even, you know what I mean? At the time though, everybody knew that you had to, but yeah, he was still on top of the pen. I don't know. I hate saying stuff like this because I have so many producer friends who get mad at me. But maybe beat selection played a role in some of that. I'm not gonna say which ones, just say man, a couple little tracks. It sounded like he was doing a favor for somebody, possibly.
Gotcha.
Because he carried it. The voice carried it. If the voice carries the song, that track was trash. So, you know, I think Great Adventures and everything else he had participated in, the melodic episodes. Do you know what I mean? Just there's so much happening to thrill your senses and almost overwhelm them at times. And I felt like that album, there were only a few for me like that. The rest were kind of underwhelming. Sorry, whoever produced some of that. I didn't say who or what songs. I'm just
your name.
One restaurant.
Somebody can look it up. We'll keep the names of it. But it is interesting. Like you mentioned, the production is, you know, the '94 album Behind Bars. That brings in like an all-star lineup of producers, but it feels like a Frankenstein's monster almost of an album. Like it's, you know, because it's
not cohesive again, right?
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's pulling stuff he recorded before he went in, and like I think he got like furloughed for a brief, and so he recorded some stuff, and it's all kind of just, it's not landing. There's no cohesion.
Yeah. And for somebody who could put together something so cohesive, that's probably a problem because that's what you crave from him. The consistency. And it's not, when I say consistency, I don't mean that it was bad. I just mean the flow of it, the song into song, even the ordering. I think maybe even if those songs had been reordered, because mind you, this is when you actually used to listen to an album. To an album, not jump, just play what I want, you know. So I think that even the way it was set up, I think the A&R should have rethought the way they put that together. I think it would have helped. Because it definitely, you'd be in this one, what they call a vibe now, right? You'd be in this one mode and then skip to the next and it's like, oh, okay, totally not the same. You know, even BPM, it's...
That tonal shift was whiplash.
Yes. So, whereas before, you know, you could kind of just cool out a little bit, you know what I mean? Or be hyped. There was nothing that wasn't smooth. There's the word I'm looking for. Even if you were going up and down roller coaster hills with Ricky before, it was always really smooth, right? And this was not smooth. This was irky jerky. This was like old school wooden roller coaster, whiplash, all over the place. So I think when you've been fed filet mignon, you're not excited to go back to hot dogs, right?
Exactly.
Some of that was hot dogs. Some of that was hot dogs. There was some filet there too, but a little bit maybe hot dogs, a little bit. But again, I think beat selection played a role in that. And some of those, because if you think about some of those rhymes, if they were spit over something either faster or slower, it'd be a whole different song. Without naming names.
So that's kind of that, we finally get out of that chapter of his legal troubles aren't over, but he finally gets out in 97, and we start, and this is kind of where we get true Rick again. He's starting to emerge. We're getting guest appearances, as I mentioned, Outcast. And then finally in 99, we get The Art of Storytelling. And this feels like the real first proper follow-up to his debut. And I still love this album. I think there's a ton of good tracks on it. What kind of are your memories of it and your assessment of that album?
Relief. I was waiting to exhale, I think maybe a little bit. 2000 era rolls around. It was like, because you don't want to hear people beat up the hero anymore. You know what I mean? You don't want to hear people beat up your heroes. And I think everybody else kind of relaxed a little bit and gave him some room to breathe and gave him some room to get busy. And once he was left up to his own devices is what it feels like to me. I don't know this. I haven't asked the man. But it felt like when he was left up to his own devices, he got in there and did what he knew how to do. And he had so much time to, again, take his time, craft something that is Ricky worthy, right? And you remembered why you fell in love, right? You remembered what it was like, oh, yeah. The wordplay.
So good.
Sick. What? How dare you? How very dare you? You can't rhyme like this. What are you doing here? It's one of those albums, again, coming into the 2000s that I was like, I just don't get it. These people who are singing and songing and doing all this stuff, like, I want to hear you say things that make me go, what? My head explode from, oh my God, where did he do it? What? And nothing was really popping me off that way. And that exact moment when that album dropped. So when it comes out, you just like, oh. Somebody tell Nas it ain't dead. It's fine. We're fine. Stop saying those things. It's fine. It's on life support possibly, but she's all right. She's gonna make it. For a moment we weren't sure, and then we really weren't sure, right? But I think this is also another example of the tragedy of not letting people just create until they can't create anymore. Because then this is when this ageism in hip hop started right around that time. And of course, this is also the time when Jay starts blowing up, which was so weird to me. Like, your favorite rapper gets AARP to his house right now. I don't realize people recognize that or not, but you won't let the 35-year-old guy live, but he's too old. He's 35. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? And I talked to Chuck D about this one time in an interview, and I was like, why are you letting these people, say these things? He was like, why are you letting your colleagues write it? And I'm like, oh, touche. Yeah, I don't write that. I will stand up. And I think this is another example, because I'm certain that Ricky could outrhyme any of these kids in his sleep, taking a bubble bath. Like, me write 50 rhymes that these clowns can't write. It's another reason why I think you should advocate for adult contemporary hip hop. Because we say it all the time, Mick Jagger and them get to sell out stadiums, and everybody bigs them up, and everybody gives them all the glory, and look, Rolling Stones still out here getting it, look at Paul McCartney still out here making money, oh, what's he doing? We got to get ourselves together in the hip hop community and culture discussion, because it's I think Versus has shown us, and for real, God bless those cats for it, because these artists are getting to see how much people still love them, how much people are still engaged with them and everything they've done, and how much they're missed and beloved. So who knows, if COVID didn't do anything else for us, maybe it'll help us get some new music from Slick Rick. Could you imagine?
That would
Think
be
of everything he would have to say for his peers now.
amazing.
Who's talking about that? Who wants to hear about aches and pains? People who have aches and pains now. Who wants to hear about having to pay bills? People who got to pay bills. Music used to speak to your ills or thrills, you know, to your love, to exciting things, but it used to speak your life. You have a soundtrack to your life, right? Could you imagine if some of this stuff is the soundtrack to your life? Ooh, that's what you're gonna tell your grandkids someday? Ooh.
That would be cool to see, you know, like you said, you know, the art of storytelling ends up being Slick's last album. And I think what's kind of been cool though is that he has still stayed involved through his guest appearances. And I've always loved that. Is like we just saw it just recently, like IDK just had him on his album. And last year West Side Gun had him on his album. And I love that, you know, Rick is still finding that way, even if it's not an album, he's still finding a way to, you know, pop up and do his guest spots over the years.
One of my favorite things about Pete Rock, Brother Pete, a number of years ago, golly, we're going on maybe 10 years ago, he and I were having lunch, and he said that one of the things that drove him crazy is that he and his brethren had hip hop godfathers. You know what I'm saying? They had points of reference and people who looked out for them and spit knowledge to them when they were first coming up as young guys. And they felt like the newer cats didn't want that. Right? And they didn't want a hip hop godfather. And I just couldn't understand that at the time. And I thought that was strange too. And then the next thing you know, Joey Badass popped up speaking to him and Primo and like, I need what y'all got. Can you teach me? And now they're all back to work, right? And I think that, you know, Slick Rick, could you imagine him being your hip hop godfather? Like one of the illest to ever touch a mic. I think these people who put him on their songs are kind of foolish in a little ways because he shows them up, in my opinion. You know, if I'm not the fastest runner, why would I put the fastest runner on my team to run in front of me so they could just boo me once I get the baton? You know what I mean? I want to run Anchor and Slick Rick's in front of me, handing me a damn baton. But at the same time, you know, congratulations to them and good on them for recognizing the greatness and wanting to be affiliated and wanting to be a part of that. That's history for them. Do you know what I mean? That's legacy moves. Those are things that even if they stop performing next week, you know, West Side Gun will always have been that guy who put Slick Rick on a track in this decade, right? So you have to commend them. Keeping the legacy going. I think that's important. That's so important. But at the same time, when I hear that, it just makes me go, just put out a freaking album. What the hell? What are you doing? Feature. You're not a feature guy. You're one of the greatest dudes to ever touch a mic. Just put your own project out, man. Stop playing. Stop playing, Richie. Stop playing. We want to hear from you.
Oh, I mean, it's a great point because I think of like all his guest spots, like in the 2000s in particular. It's like he did the Most Def Joint Auditorium, and then like Chameleonaire, Hip Hop Police.
Who saw that who had that on their bingo card?
Yeah,
I certainly did.
Exactly. It is like, and even like Slick even was like tapped into the underground, like Dinas out of Miami. Like he was working with him, and I just love that. It was like, oh man, like Slick is still tapped in. He knows what's going on, and it's, you know, these aren't phoned in verses. This is Slick.
No, listen, Justin, we know what those are. We know what phoned in verses are, right? We are aware of people who are like, how much they pay me for how many bars? All right. So they'll do a verse. It may be a verse they already spit on something else, some other underground cat who don't realize that he already said that verse. Just send it out. How much? Did it clear? Cash App? Okay, cool. We know what recycled is. We know what wrote in 5 minutes is. We know what I really don't care, and I'm not gonna push this. I'm gonna say when the kid tags me in the IG thing, I'm gonna say it, put it in my story, so I don't have to put it on my actual timeline. So you won't actually see it for 24 hours. It'll be in my story, and then that's it. And on to the next. We know what that is. This was not that. He's still spitting timelessly, you know. He's still slapping that mic around like it stole out his mama's pocketbook.
So I do wonder, do you think, I think hip hop, we talked about that ageism. I think it's gotten better, that we've seen guys finding careers kind of later in their life, the starting in the 30s or rebranding and that idea of 35 you're done is fading somewhat. Do you feel like Slick Rick could drop an album? Like, do you think there's sort of momentum for it? Maybe if the right producers reach out to him or anything like that.
If we start a rumor, me and you, maybe let's just start that damn rumor right now. See what we can make happen. Do we have that kind of juice? Yeah, I think that a couple of cats recently, whether it be De La Soul, Tribe, Busta Rhymes, in the last few years have put out some stuff. Even Jay came back home, right? And stopped making stuff that made me go, what? Really? You're the same dude that read the encyclopedia in the dictionary? Where to go, even he came back home, So do I think it can be done? Sure. Do I think it should be done? Yes. Will I start the petition? If y'all want me to, I'll go start it up on whatever that is, .org, .net, whatever. Do I think there would be momentum? Yes, I really do. Because these other cats have done it and very successfully and ended up with Grammy noms for them, to the chagrin of others, which just makes it even better for me. Yeah, why not? Why not him? Why not him? Sure. Yes. I vote yeah.
I like it. Hope maybe this will get the momentum started for that. But yeah, before we close out, if you could kind of, just from your years as a fan, as a journalist, as someone who's seen Rick from the beginning to now, what's something?
I see him from the beginning, but yeah.
Well,
but no, I get your point. Yes.
What would you say is the most important note in Rick's career? What would you kind of sum up as his legacy?
Talented, unmatched. Again, who's taking him off that list? You can't. If he never spits another verse, you can't take him off that list because there's no one who's ever told a story better. Sorry, I know there's a lot of storytellers out there, and I love you too. But I would be hard pressed to find out who that person was. Somebody who can open up a storybook for you. From the dedication on the first page of the table of contents all the way to the end and who he wrote it for. You know what I mean? The appendix. He's got you. And you're stuck off the realness. you're stuck on every single word, and you're in belief. You see these things. A lot of times people don't realize that when they're writing these rhymes, this tapestry that they're weaving, it becomes a part of your mind. We've all seen these pictures before we ever saw a video, right? Videos don't hold the same cachet for the younger generations that they did for us. And that's a shame, because that was another thing he's really good at. So I think that the ability to write something that will permeate our minds and last forever. You said 21 Savage. what verse of his, like, permeated your mind and was going to last forever because you were hanging on every word. You don't have to answer that. Keep it to yourself. I'm just saying.
No,
I'm not saying, just saying.
Great point. Like, you think of Slick as just phrases, words that have just traveled through other hip hop songs. Like, I mean, who in hip hop,
Crumbs.
like, who gets covered like that? Like, I mean, Snoop just straight up doing Lottie Dottie and Black Star doing children's stories. Like that, it's just, that's so foreign in rap, but it's like they did it for Slick because it's so good.
When Snoop did Lottie Dottie, people didn't know what to think. They were like, tribute or what?
Or biting.
Are we mad or do we think, oh, what a fitting what do you do? What do you do? Nobody knew where to go. Their heads were all messed up. And you look back now, when we rock up on the mic, that's fun. It's fun. Even when it's dark, like you said, it's fun. It's fun. And it's memorable. And for all these people who want to sound Drake is famous, he's popular, I'm gonna sound just like him, or Migos, and I'm gonna sound just like that. Brother Payne the other day got it right. Thank you, T-Pain. Thank you for saying what I feel. I'm saying we got that already. Stand out. You want me and Justin to come find you, but you want to be a sheeple. You sound and look just like everyone else. You're a part of the herd. You're a lemming jumping off the cliff with the others. How are we supposed to find you? We can't. Throw a Kango on, put your eye patch, learn how to rhyme, and come on back and show us what you know how to do. Because that's who we get excited for. Come on, Justin. How many times have you come across somebody who reminds you of a young this or that? And you're like, oh, I got the next one. I got the next one. I got the next one. The next one doesn't mean sound just like. You know what I mean? When Your Old Drew came out, everybody thought it was Nas. What if that's the worst thing anybody could say about you? Sound like Nas to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. I sometimes catch a lot for who I break and for what, but if it's reminiscent of greatness like that, you're welcome. Yes, he reminds me of this one. You're welcome. But I got to tell you, I've not met the Slick Rick comparison. I've not. Ghostface, yep. And he got real mad at the guy who I broke that sounded like him. We won't bring that back up. Peace to the gods, peace to them both, like them both. I've heard several people who reminded me of this one or that one. I've never heard anyone, Dana Ding, who reminded me of Slick Rick.
A true original. And Skyy, you're a true original. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there any way to let people know where to follow you or you keep up with your work?
Oh gosh. You can catch me on the world famous Wake Up Show on Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on SiriusXM Shade 45. It rebroadcast right before Sway in the Morning on Thursday mornings at 6 a.m. And if you just want antics, you will not find intelligent conversation on my socials at all. I apologize. I'm into just memes and making people smile, people. That's it. Don't think that's all I got. But you can catch me at Skyy Hook, SKYYHOOK on Insta and Skyy Hook Radio on Twitter.
She's one of the best. Follow her. Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. I'm so excited we got to do this finally.
great conversation with Skyy. So happy she could do the show. Great having her on. Lynn, we weren't able to have you in there in that interview, but I did want to get your thoughts, man. What's what's some of your memories of Slick Rick?
See, and this is another one of those that I'm upset that I missed, because like Slick Rick, funny enough, a lot of my rap knowledge as a kid comes from my dad. Like I'd say like 90% of my early listening to like Fabulous, 50 Cent, Jadakiss. He's a big New York head from like the 90s to the 2000s. But I gotta say, I attribute my mom not only for R&B, but like giving me the 80s, early 90s hip hop, and she would listen to Dougie Fresh. She would listen to Sugar Hill and the Gang, and her ultimate favorite was Slick Rick. And I could remember just us jamming Children's Story on my way to elementary school in like 4th, 5th, and then 6th grade, her driving me all those years. And then by the time I'm in 6th grade, I'm like singing Children's Story word for word. And she's like, you can't sing this in school. And I'm like, why? This is great. And she was like, no, you can't do that. But that was like our thing. So it was great memories listening to Slick Rick, and just the storytelling was immaculate.
Absolutely. So we're glad to cover the career of Slick Rick on this one. And before we leave you guys this week, we always like to give you a little bit of listener laying you up, go into Lynn and I's taste, show you a little bit about what we've been enjoying of late. So Lynn, man, what you been checking out?
Ooh, I got some good stuff this week for you, ladies and gents. Some good stuff, courtesy of the people 824. So the first one I recommend is you can rent this. It's not on any streaming, but you have to go to like Amazon and rent it, or wherever you really rent movies at on the internet. It's called Zola, 824 production. It's about the legendary Twitter thread of this girl's weekend in Tampa or Miami, in Florida, stripping for the night, and how that adventure goes haywire from this girl that she met 2 days before they went. And I was like, the movie's insane, great cast. I will say I wouldn't watch this around kids because there's a bunch of nudity, a lot of weird stuff going down, but the movie itself, great. I like to say it falls into that category of movies like Wolf of Wall Street, of movies like Goodfellas, of movies like Hustlers, because these are the downward spiral movies that by the end of it, it's like, yo, this is kind of messed up, but you love watching that downward spiral. So Zola is the first one I recommend. The second one is in theaters only right now. It's also 824. It's Dev Patel. It is The Green Knight. It's the story of Sir Gawain in The Green Knight. And I got to preface this. It's not like Troy. It's not like The King on Netflix. It's not like 300. Not a lot of action. If you expect to see a lot of sword fights, this is not that. This is the journey of Sir Gawain and his quest. And basically all of the magical elements of King Arthur are like highlighted in this and made into like this psychedelic trip. It's insane, but really love the movie. So those are the two that I'll suggest to you, Green Knight and Zola.
Nice. Yeah. A24 is the most trustworthy production company these days.
They're killing it. It's either them or Blumhouse. Like I was talking on Twitter with we got into like a long thread, like a bunch of people, and Blumhouse is the only other one that I can think besides A24 that's really, really putting out quality every time out.
Gotcha. All right. So for me, I'm gonna go, one little music front and rep a little Louisiana hip hop. Baton Rouge 2 with Quadri.
Oh yeah, Quadri did drop
a new album. They Think We Ghetto. I was lucky enough to hear this, before it dropped.
Ooh, is it good? See, I haven't listened to this yet. Is it good? I like you're throwing me on game. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It's just well-made album. Just one of those kind of, okay, this is gonna be memorable in terms of the Baton Rouge lineage, and just an absolutely great little posse cut on there too, with a Grip out of Atlanta, who's linked to Shady now, and Baton Rouge up and comer Tommy Rouge. So that's
snap! One of my favorite. Shout out to my guy Tommy. That's hard.
So yeah, Quadri's new album, They Think We Ghetto. That's and if you ever heard of Quadri before, you definitely jump into his stuff. He's got an album with Jansport J, who works with everybody from like Snoop to Knowledge, and so yeah, definitely get up on Quadri.
Quadri's one of the best in BR, man. That's awesome. Hell yeah.
And then I will go with a movie too, and I don't know if you're familiar with like Johnny 2. He's like an action director in in Asia.
Maybe depending on if I saw his films. Is this like Korean? Is this to the list?
It's not Korean. Okay. He's not Korean. But yeah, he's like, big, action flick, gangster movie type guy.
Okay.
And anyway, and so I just kind of stumbled on this movie almost accidentally. I just saw he directed. I was like, okay, yeah, I trust Johnny too. And it was called The Mad Detective. It was a very odd story where, this detective just has this magic ability, or able to always get the case right. Like he can see what's happening. It's never explained like how he can.
He just can.
He has this, sixth sense ability type of, to know who's guilty. And but he gets taken off the force because he's sort of crazy, and he chops off his ear like almost like as a gift to his retiring commissioner. And so they're like, no, buddy, you can't be on the force anymore. and so this other cop, goes to him and is like, I need your help solving this, impossible case. And so it's this whole, following him of like, is he crazy? How does he know these things? It's sort of that kind of story of figuring out, what his real deal is. And I was very entertained by it. I think it might have been on like Tubi, something free. It was easy to find, but yeah. Mad Detective. That's going to be my movie recommendation.
Ooh, I'm going to have to check that out. Also, I don't know if you saw, your guy Marlon Craft dropped a new song. That Halal song is hard. It's fire.
Yeah, Marlon Craft, definitely. Though. And funny, too, to mention him with the Zola, because I remember seeing the Zola promo pic and one of the characters. I was like, that guy looks like a bootleg.
Oh, you're talking about Derek. I know yeah. Nah, Marlon Craft looks better than that guy. That's Greg from Succession.
Oh, man. So, man, thank you all for joining us for another episode of Never Less a Yield. We appreciate you listening to us, and we'll be back soon with another one. Peace.
Peace.